Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Brazinsky. I'm a high school counselor at South High School in Denver. And I have created this presentation to share some of my college counseling resources with you. So I hope that you will find it helpful. It was created in the pre-COVID era, and I'm hoping that these resources will still be helpful to you. I have also worked in some COVID resources as well. So I'm going to go through today macro college counseling, individual college counseling, financial aid and scholarships, college nights for students and parents, counseling students with special circumstances, COVID-19 resources, professional development, and then some general resources. Please bear with me because probably each of these agenda items could be its own presentation. I will try to be as clear and succinct as possible, and you can certainly contact me if you have any questions about the presentation. So to start with macro college counseling in big groups, and implementing a macro model. I think that depending on the school that you're at, your school will have different situations and different needs. I've worked in 3 different high schools. 2 of them have been large comprehensive high schools. One was a small international school, and the needs and the timing available were very different in all 3 schools. I'm going to talk about South High School, where I am right now. We are a big comprehensive high school. We have over 1,600 students, and it is a challenge often to find time to get into classes to give students the information that they need. However, the ICAP, the Individual Career and Academic Plan, which is a graduation requirement in Colorado, is something that we can use as a tool to help us, since students must complete an ICAP now to graduate. That helps in advocating with administration to schedule time for counselors to get into classrooms and seminar classes with students. We follow the ASCA model, the American School Counseling Association model. And we are setting up a developmental counseling model, which means that we are creating lessons appropriate for each grade year, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And we are in the process of going for RAMP, which is the recognized ASCA model program. Okay, so basically, as I talked about, individual career and academic plan, which is a graduation requirement. And what we are doing in South High School is in grades 9 and 10, we are mostly focusing on exploring interests and exploring careers, having students figure out who am I and what careers out there fit with my interests and what I may want to do for a living. And then in grades 11 and 12, we move more into focusing on the post-secondary process. Since we are applying for the recognized ASCA model program, we have begun developing this action plan. And so as you can see, what we have done is this year, we have created a plan which shows what we are doing throughout the year and with which grade level. So the date that we're doing it, the grade level, and then what is the activity, and then the effectiveness. So this is where we put our pre and post tests, who delivers it, and where it's delivered. And so the purpose of this is so that we will have our plan ready every year, so we don't have to keep recreating the wheel. And then we also give this to our administrators as they create the calendar and say, okay, here's a reminder that counselors get a session in 9th grade academy, which is something that happens for 9th graders the week before school starts, and that counselors get time in 12th grade English classes and in 9th grade English classes in the beginning and the middle of September. So as you can see, I'll just show you a quick example. We have beginning of September, grade 12, and we have here a post-secondary planning lesson plan. And then from there, we have a pre-test and a post-test. And so this is how we collect our data. The students fill out the survey, and then we are able to look at the responses and see our data. And then we just have all the information. And so we've been building this all year long. As you can see, we kind of ended in March when we had to leave because of COVID, but we will continue working on that. So that is our model that is in progress, that we're continuously building on, and we also can use it when we apply for RAMP. Okay, so this next slide is just showing a sample college counseling sequence, which currently we don't get enough time with our grade 11 students to be able to do. However, my first year at South, we did have the AVID program, Advancement via Individual Determination, which is a program for first generation students to help get them on track for college. So I reached out to those AVID teachers and I said, hey, can I come into your classes and deliver some workshops about applying to college? I thought it was a really good opportunity since it is all first generation students in there. And they said, hey, that would be great. And so I delivered 10 lessons on the topics that are listed here: researching colleges, the college admissions process, mock college admissions exercise, the basics of financial aid, and understanding award letters. So I feel like sometimes at a big school, we just have to look for every opportunity that we can get. And if your school does have the AVID program, that's a really good opportunity to find time to get into the class. This was the results of the data from those presentations. And so since at that point, we really weren't doing that much work in terms of entering into classes, I took this data and I gave it to my assistant principal and I said, hey, look at the difference of how much students know after I go in and talk to them about the college and financial aid process. I went in, I started in February, I finished in May, and basically students said that they understood much more about many topics related to the post-secondary process after my 10 presentations. And this is a reason why we have to find more time for counselors to be able to get into classrooms and seminar classes to deliver this information, because we could see here that this is going to help students. Here is some more data. This was from this fall, because now we are getting a lot more time to get into classes with students. And this was just very simple data about post-secondary planning. And sometimes what happens is that we don't get that much time with students. So when we are in the classes with them, we want to maximize our time, and we don't want to spend that much time collecting data, but we still want to walk out with some information. So what I try to do is think about what is the biggest thing that I want students to be able to say they understand after this lesson, and then just ask them that question at the beginning of the class and at the end of the class. So they just have to answer one question. So they come in and they have to answer, I am aware of the next steps I can take towards planning my life after graduation from South High School. And then they answer that question again at the end. And as you can see, the red and the blue are strongly agree and agree. So you could see that those numbers are much bigger in the post-test at the end of the session. And I feel like this data is always important to constantly remind administrators about how important our work is and to show them how it makes a difference. Okay, so then getting into individual one-on-one college counseling. So is it possible to meet with every student in your caseload? That's difficult. If you've got a small caseload, it probably is. If you have an enormous caseload, some counselors have 400 or 500 students. How do you prioritize? At South High School, every counselor has a little over 300 students. And I actually do meet with every senior in my caseload because it ends up being about 60 to 70 seniors. However, I do prioritize. So the first thing that I do is I identify which students are going to need my help the most. So I go through my list of seniors and I look at who are my first generation students, who are my students who are language learners, who are my students that I know are not getting that help at home. And I create a list of those students. And then I also create 3 or 4 tasks that I want to make sure that I get done with them. So examples of the tasks may be to create a college or a post-secondary plan. Maybe it is to get them set up with a system for practicing for the SAT, ACT. If those will continue to be a thing in our lives, we're not sure right now. I will also maybe have a task of helping them begin working on their resume. And so my goal will be, I'm going to meet with these 30 students first who I know really are going to need my help, and I'm going to make sure they get all those 3 things done. And it takes a really long time to get through that list, but that's how I prioritize. I also look at closing the gap. So I also make sure that on that list are also my students of color. And then the other thing I do when I am prioritizing is I think about any partners that are at our school or outside of our school and see if those students are getting help from there. So for example, some of my students who are first generation are working with Minds Matter. So I might just check in with them first and see how far along they are in their work with Minds Matter. And if they've already created a list and they already have a plan to go to a summer program, which is something Minds Matter usually requires them to do, and they're already practicing for their SAT, then they might not be at the top of my priority list. The top of the priority list are going to be my students that I know are not getting any help or any support. One of the things that we did this academic year also, which was really helpful, was that we made every senior sign up for a 30-minute meeting with us during registration before school started. And 30 minutes is a short time. You can't get much done, but it gave me the opportunity to see if we had already had a meeting. The parent was also present in the meeting, so it gave me the opportunity to talk to parents. I gave general instructions to the student, and then I was also able to say to the student, make sure that you come down during August or September and set up a meeting with me to start talking about your post-secondary plan. So even though those meetings were short, it did give me the opportunity just to get students going if they hadn't done much by that point. Okay, so how do I help students create a college list? Well, I've created my own form, which is sort of an intake form. And it's a very simple Google Doc that just looks like this. I put the date of the meeting, and what I end up doing is every time I meet with the student, I put in the date. I ask them about the general things, their academic interests, where they want to be, what type of school they want to go to, what type of college, any special requests that they have. Really, most of my students are thinking about staying in state in Colorado, but some of my students are thinking about going out of state. Also, if I have students who are very strong students who are not thinking about looking outside of Colorado, but I'm pretty sure that they would be able to have an opportunity and get some scholarship money, I will often add colleges to their list. And I'm very careful about the way that I do this because I always want to make sure that anything that I'm recommending to a student is something that will most likely be financially viable. So I will often look at colleges where I think it's a good chance that they can get a really good merit scholarship, or even more safely, colleges that meet full financial need. And so I try to encourage students who normally wouldn't look at those opportunities to at least consider them. So on this page, I then ask them what schools they're looking for, and then I use a combination of resources to add some schools to their list based on what they tell me above. So I will, based on what they tell me they want to study, I will use Rugg's Recommendations, which is a book that I like a lot, or the College Board Index of Majors is another guide that I use. And I'll mention a few others in a little bit. And then from there, I have a link to our South High School College Planning Guide, which is a planning guide I created and update each year, which has all of the information that students use. And then I put in all of their SAT information, or if a TOEFL or some other type of, or a Duolingo exam may be needed or helpful. And then I also put in the links to the College Board, to Khan Academy, and notes about financial aid, all the links to financial aid that they need, and then information about how to research colleges. And then in the end, I give them a list of things to do. So that's usually the first meeting that I have with them. The College Finder is the other book that I use with students in the first meeting. I usually also show them how to use the Naviance College Match. We're actually switching from Naviance to Maya Learning, so I will show them that. And the Big Future website, which are tools that they can use to do some searching on their own. And as I said, I give them a to-do list, and I also go over resources with them to research colleges. I show them how to get on the college website and research. And I talk to them also about the FISC guide to colleges, and some other websites where they can find some information. In the second meeting, I usually look at the chances of them getting into college using the college statistics and using the Naviance scattergrams. And that information is always specific to your own high school, well, depending on how you have Naviance set up, if you do have Naviance. So that's how I do the meetings. And I also want to emphasize that I always keep the financial part in mind, so that I'm not putting a school on a student's list where I know it's not going to be likely that they're going to get the financial aid and scholarship that they need. This is something that I'm always cognizant of. So as I mentioned before, I use my college counseling plan Google template. This is the same form I just showed you. And some of my favorite resources are the Rugg's Guide to College, the Rugg's seminar sheets, which have different lists of colleges, like colleges for the athlete, colleges, diverse colleges, LGBTQ plus friendly colleges. So I like the Rugg seminar sheets for that. I also like the FISC Guide to Colleges and the Antonoff College Finder. If we were doing this presentation in person, I would ask all of you to tell me what your favorite resources are, because I feel like we all have different resources that we like that help us with that. Sadly, we're not all together at the RMACAC conference, but hopefully we will be next year. Okay, so resources for financial aid and scholarships. So the first thing I always tell students is that they should check the financial aid and scholarship page in the website of every college that they apply to. This is the best place to start, and this is where most of the money comes from. The other thing I tell students is that it's really important that they understand the financial aid policy of the colleges that they are applying to, because some colleges meet the full financial need of every student. Other colleges offer merit scholarships, but they may gap students. So it's really important for students to become familiar with this and then to get onto the financial aid and scholarship page of the college and look up these policies. The other thing that I tell students to do is to use the financial aid calculator that is on the financial aid website of every college, this is something that also will give them an idea about how accessible that college might be for them financially. So that is always where I have students start, is understanding the information about the colleges. There's a few resources that I found. So Big Future, College Source, and Financial Aid. Here is, if you basically in this website, say that you are interested in Boston University. This will pull up all of the information about Boston University. And then if you click on the paying part, it shows you in and out of state costs, which is the same for a private university. And then it shows you how to apply for financial aid. And then it has this financial aid by the numbers, which I think this part is pretty interesting. 92% of need meant, 100% of freshmen with need who received financial aid. And then here it shows applied for need-based aid, judged to have need. So 49% applied, and they judged 85% of that 49 to have need. And they offered aid to the 85% that they judged to have need. And only 28%, it says here, had full need met. So that's something important to know. So I think that this website is interesting, has lots of information. And then also it talks about different scholarships that are available, but this is absolutely not to be replaced with going to the actual college website. College Greenlight, they have a list of colleges that meet 100% of need. So that's another good list to give for students to have a look at. And then students also often ask, how can I look for other scholarships? Well, in Denver, at South, we have the Denver Scholarship Foundation, and they offer a lot of scholarships to students. So anyone in Denver obviously will use the Denver Scholarship Foundation, anyone in Denver Public Schools. But for those of you who are not in Denver Public Schools, there are some other search engines that students can use. These are the ones that I've compiled that I think are okay. The Sallie Mae Scholarship Search, FastWeb. If you're in Colorado, mycoloradojourney.com, and then scholarsnap.org. What I tell students to do is to create a new email separate just for these search engines, because they may tend to spam students with tons of emails once they sign up. So I tell them, create a separate email address and then use that email for the search. But oftentimes students do find little scholarships here and there through these search engines. So if they have the time and don't mind putting in the effort, then I think it's worth it for them to take a look. Okay, college nights for parents and students. So I'm just going to go through some of the ideas that I have. The first one is the college admissions panel, which we have not done in South High School yet, but we did do this at the first public high school that I worked at, and it was amazing. We just had someone from a mid-sized private college or university come, someone from a big state college, from someone from a community college, and all of them talked about their schools and the admissions processes at those schools and how they work. And so I am hoping to actually do something like this, but I'm thinking more of doing it during the school day at South, where we have someone from CU, CSU, maybe Community College of Denver, University of Denver, maybe MSU Denver, which is very popular with our students, just come and talk about their admissions process, what they're looking for, how they review applications, so that students can just really have an understanding of the difference between applying to a community college, applying to a four-year state college, applying to a college that's more residential versus more of a commuter school, applying to a mid-sized private university. I feel like it's really helpful for students to hear these presentations, and also much more interesting for them to hear it directly from the admissions counselors, the people who actually read their applications. Something that we have implemented at South High School, which was an idea that I kind of took from the first high school I worked at, is having a college night where people rotate to several sessions. So when I worked outside of Boston, we had a very robust college junior night where we had about 10 different sessions on every topic you can imagine. At South, what we did was we chose 3 areas that we think families really need to hear about. And then we have all of the families rotate through all 3 sessions. So everyone starts out in the auditorium, and then we create 3 different programs, and we give a third of the families one program, a third the second program, and the third program. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but basically programs that guide them to go to 3 different sessions. So instead of everyone sitting in the auditorium and getting all the information at once, they move around and they hear different speakers. And we've gotten really good feedback on that. And here in this presentation, and I will share these slides with you, you will see, you will have links to the 3 presentations we do, which is Finding the Right Fit, the South High School College App Process, and Financial Aid 101. So just a quick preview. Finding your college fit. It's going to probably take too long to load. Then the South High School College App Process and Financial Aid 101. The other thing too is that we have FAFSA workshops. We are very lucky because we have Denver Scholarship Foundation, and Denver Scholarship Foundation organizes this at our school. And our college advisor from DSF invites financial aid experts from around Colorado to come to South. And then each of our family who signs up gets one-on-one help filling out their FAFSA. This is really effective because we end up getting anywhere from 60 to 80 families with a completed FAFSA on that one night, which is a big step for us. You might not have something like DSF, but I wanted to let you know that the ECMC Foundation, there's a person named Chevy Lowe, and she definitely works with everyone in Colorado and could probably direct you to whether there is a resource in your state. She will actually go to high schools and run financial aid workshops. She will also come and help your families with their FAFSAs. She will also come and help with verification. So basically what she does is that she offers to be extended bandwidth to counselors who are in need. And she's amazing. So she works for ECMC, which is a lending organization, and every lending organization requires that there will be somebody who also does financial literacy and helps with questions about financial aid and the post-secondary process. So Chevy is a resource for us, and her services are free. And that is her email, clo@ecmc.org. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and need some help with the financial aid part, I would recommend reaching out to Chevy, and she will probably be able to get you some help in one way or another. She has all different types of programs where students sign up to text with her, and she sends them reminders through text and information through text. And sometimes she'll meet with them in a cafe off campus and help them with whatever they need. So she's a great resource. Another thing that we're thinking about doing at South High School is just adding in some workshops at parent conferences and back to school nights. We don't know how that will work yet, but one of the things we find is when we have just a college night, we might not get that many parents, or we'll only get parents who live in the immediate neighborhood. And so we're trying to think about how can we get parents who live further away to be part of our post-secondary workshops and information sessions. And we're looking at the events at school that are most well attended and thinking about adding in workshops during those events. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, counseling students with special circumstances. So students with disabilities, I have attached a presentation by Dr. Jill Corbin, who works at Denver Academy. Denver Academy is a school that specifically helps, that is specifically designed for students with learning differences. And so Jill Corbin is an expert on advising students with learning differences on post-secondary options. So I have linked to her presentation that she did for Denver Public School counselors, where you could get tons of information. So you would need to download it. And then the other recommendation that I have is the K and W Guide to Colleges for Students with Learning Disabilities. This is an excellent guide which gives a good description of what each college offers in terms of support for students with learning differences. And it talks about how comprehensive each college's program is. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. The student athlete, here I have a link to the NCAA eligibility. And I think one thing that's really important with student athletes is trying to have a conversation with them very early on. And I think the ideal is to get them to begin with the NCAA eligibility process in grade 10 so that they're already aware of which classes they need to be eligible for NCAA. They also know what grade point average and what SAT score they need to shoot for in order to be eligible. And then from there, DACA students and undocumented students, I have compiled a list of resources for of scholarships and financial aid that is available for DACA students. And so I'm continuously, every time I find a resource, I add it to this list. So if you're looking for scholarships and financial aid for DACA students, you can find it here. This list also has a list of colleges and working list of DACA policies for U.S. colleges and universities. So you can see what the policy is, the financial aid and scholarship policy for each college and university. So I think that that can be something that's really helpful. And here you can see it's opening. My computer's kind of slow from home. Here you can see the link to Dr. Corbin's presentation about post-secondary transition counseling for students with learning differences. And if you go through here, you will find many, many resources and lots of good information. Lots of great information. Okay, next. Here are the resources that I have compiled during COVID-19. And I'm going to see if I can close some of these windows up here. Okay, so one great resource that I found is the National College Attainment Network, NCAN. They have lots of great information. They actually created a roundup of COVID-19 resources, which you can access. And they also have great webinars as well. Denver Public Schools is a member of the National College Attainment Network. So that means that we're able to access all of the resources and be able to watch all the webinars. There is some information you can access if you are not a member. However, if possible, it would be really good if your school district could become a member, because there's just so much great information here on the NCAN network website. The next thing is Form Swift. So Form Swift, this is something that helps families to request a change in their financial aid package, so or to make a financial aid appeal. So it helps students to create an appeal. It helps them write the letter. It walks them through all of the steps. Am I eligible? What documents do I need? How do I write an appeal letter? How do I submit my letter? So I think this is really helpful. And I think it's been especially helpful during this remote learning time, because I feel like when we are in the office, we can sit and help students more directly. And sometimes that's a little bit more difficult to do remotely. But this Form Swift walks them through the process. So I think that's also has been a great resource for COVID. Sorry. Then the next is the NACAC request for enrollment deposit waiver. We might be a little late for that now, but if there is a student who is going, that you know of, that wants to deposit at a college or university but cannot afford to pay the deposit right now, they can use this NACAC request for enrollment deposit. Then we also have the NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling, as you know, coronavirus updates. So you can find all of the updates related to the college admissions process and what's happening in relation to COVID-19 there. The other thing that I have found to be a great resource is Screencastify, which is something I'm using right now. Since we couldn't be with students as much as we would have liked, Screencastify was great for making videos for students and then sending them out and posting them up. These are just some examples of 3 little videos that I made for my students, and I posted them on Schoology, and I sent them out to students in an email, and that way students were able to get directions to the things that they need to do. The other amazing resource that many of you are probably familiar with is FairTest. FairTest is one of our greatest advocates for fair testing, fair and open testing, and has advocated for test optional admissions policies. And they have kept an up-to-date list of all of the colleges that have gone test optional. So you can see down here, they have a list of all of the colleges that are test optional. And they also, if you're part of the NACAC listserv, then you will get an email from FairTest every time a college makes an announcement that they're going to go test optional. So right here are some of my COVID-19 resources. Professional development, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling is an amazing professional development. I haven't had the chance to go in a really long time. There are some scholarships available. And so it's worth taking a look at if your school or school district isn't able to send you. And one of the conversations that I am trying to bring up with NACAC, and I know is important to NACAC, is how do we include more public school counselors in NACAC, at the conference, in all of the conversations. And if nothing else, it's really easy to follow their email listserv. If you go on their website, you can sign up for that. I find it helpful, even though you get tons of emails, because it just keeps you on top of everything that's going on. If something new is happening and you haven't had time to really read through or do your research, it will pop up through the NACAC email listserv. So it's a great resource. It's also a place where you can write in about questions that you have, things of that sort. And also FairTest, they constantly put updates there about test optional admissions policies. And then, of course, our favorite, Rocky Mountain Association for College Admissions Counseling. This is our local chapter of NACAC. They have been amazing. They're amazing with scholarships. I have to say, I got a scholarship to attend the Super AC conference, and then a colleague of mine was offered a scholarship to attend the RMACAC conference this year, which ended up being canceled. However, they have been really generous with offering scholarships to school counselors who can't get funding from their from their schools or districts to go. The other thing that I think is amazing that RMACAC offers is the summer college tour. I went on the Wild West tour last summer. I learned so much. What I thought was so cool about this tour was not only having the chance to get on college campuses that I haven't been on before and having the chance to spend a week with my colleagues and learn from them. But also in every tour, we got to sit and talk with the admissions directors and the admissions counselors from our region and get to know them and get to ask questions. And I feel like this is really valuable. This is some of the best professional development that you can get around the college admissions process, like going on a campus, seeing what they have, talking with the admissions counselors. It's just amazing. And on top of that, you can get graduate credit for it as well. So hopefully things will be back to normal next summer. And I highly, highly recommend doing the summer college tour. The Colorado Council College Update. If you are in Colorado, every fall there is a Colorado Council College Update where all the admissions counselors from all the Colorado colleges come and give an update about their institution. It's awesome. There's also a college fair, and it's a really great opportunity to get all of the information that you need. And then once again, the National College Attainment Network, NCAN, their webinar series I mentioned earlier. They have lots of great webinars about affordability and how to pay for college. They also have great workshops about how to help students who might have food insecurity when they go to college, or who it's really a financial struggle to get through. NCAN has lots of information and resources for those students. Okay, so I have compiled a page of resources for you. So one of the things that I've compiled is this college counseling resource file. It says CSCA because I also did give this presentation at CSCA, but I'm just going to show you quickly what we have in here. So we have, this is an opportunities guide that's from the ECMC Foundation. This one I'll probably get rid of. It is an old spreadsheet about colleges giving need-based versus merit-based financial aid. It's already from 2017, and now all of that information is on the Big Future website I showed you. Here is my presentation. This is the guide for international admission. So every now and again, you have that student that comes up to you and is like, I want to go to college in Italy, or I want to go to college in Australia. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do? I have no idea about that. This international guide is amazing because it actually gives you information about what students in the US need to do to apply to college in many different countries. And so there you can see Australia, Canada, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, South Korea, Spain, etc. So this is a great resource for when you get that student who says they want to go to college in another country. And then this is CSCA Realizing the Dream. This is also from the ECMC Foundation. And basically this is, what this has is lesson plans that you can use when you go into classes. So I like to create my own lesson plans. However, sometimes you don't have time, and sometimes it's helpful to look at other lesson plans to get ideas. So I did use this resource for some of the lesson plans that I created when I worked with the grade 11 AVID class. And so it's really great. It has mock college admissions, exercises, all types of different activities and exercises for students, and a lot of activities that I had not thought up on my own that were a lot of fun. So this is a great resource for that as well. It's on the ECMC website. Then we have, again, this is the template that that I created, that I used. You can make a copy of it and use it if you like as well, if you think it's interesting. You probably would want to change some of the links. One of the things I also like about this that I didn't mention before is after I create this with students, I share it with them, and then I can also share it with their parents. So if a parent contacts me and wants to know what conversations I've had with their student, I can share this with them and they can also look at it. So it's not really the most high tech, but it does, for me, it does work pretty well. And the other thing too is that then I have it saved for each student, and I can always go back and look at what conversations I've had with the student, what colleges I've recommended. I can see ultimately when they make their when they submit their applications, if they followed any of my advice and they applied to colleges that maybe they wouldn't have because I recommended it, or if they went to a college maybe they wouldn't have because I recommended it, which gives me also an idea of how effective I am in my role and how much I may or may not be helping students. So this is there for you as well. And then I have the list that I have compiled for Dreamers of all the scholarships and financial aid and the working list of colleges and their policies around DACA and Dreamers. So that's also here in this file. Then up here in the top, this is the all of the lessons that I used for my when I did have the chance to go into that AVID class. So if you want to take a look at these lesson plans that I did, you can have a look at that as well. I ended up doing 10 sessions. Sometimes the lesson plans took more than one class period, depending on the conversations that we got into and the questions that students had. And then many of you have probably seen this, but this is from the Regional Admissions Counselors of California. They created this great mock admissions exercise where students pretend to be college admissions counselors, and they basically evaluate applications for different colleges and universities, and they look at different case studies and decide who gets in and who doesn't. And so this is awesome because all the materials are there, everything's already done. And so if you want to do a mock admissions exercise with your students, you've just got everything here, and it's really easy to set up. So those are some of the resources that I've got there in that resource folder for you. Then we've got Fair Test, then the ECMC resources. This is the ECMC website that I talked to you about. The Regional Admissions Counselors of California. Whoops, sorry. What else do we have? The grade 11 lessons and resources, the template for the college meeting, DACA resources, guide for overseas admissions, and then also the South High School College Planning Guide, which I created, which I will be making a lot of updates to, especially since we are changing from Naviance to Maya Learning. And finally, the NACAC email listserv, which is something that you can sign up for. Since we are not in person, I'm not able to take your questions or comments, but you certainly can feel free to get in touch with me. My email is here and my phone number is here, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that all this information is helpful to you and that you can use some of these resources, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do this in person. Have a great day. Thank you.